All right, welcome to STIO Psych. I'm Stephen Downing, a clinical psychologist from Australia. Today we'll be doing what we normally do, which is breaking down a Reddit thread from MR the Asshole. Yeah, we'll usually do this by I'll pick whichever one is the top one that is not an update or an edit or something like that. Like if you like it, subscribe if you want to see more like this. And right, we shall rip into it. So we have done this before, or something very similar to this. Okay, this is interesting. Okay, all right. So I shall read it from beginning to end, and then we'll break it down from there. So, am I the asshole for being hurt about what my autistic sister-in-law said about my stillborn baby? Trigger warning for child loss and stillborn baby. This really hurts to have to ask, but I'm searching for unbiased advice. My husband, 34-year-old male, and I, female 28, suffered the loss of our first baby just 3 weeks ago. I was 32 weeks pregnant, and I noticed that our daughter was not moving as much as usual on a Friday night, or really moving at all. Saturday morning at 3:24, I gave birth to her stillborn. It was and is genuinely the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Everyone and every mum warns you about postpartum, but no one warns you about suffering it with no baby. Since then, obviously, we've been bombarded with support from our family, and I'm so grateful for that. My sister-in-law, however, I've never really gotten along with, half-sister of my husband. She came with my mother-in-law to visit only a week after I gave birth. For context, my mother-in-law says that my sister-in-law is autistic, even though she isn't diagnosed, and that she says things without thinking, which is a symptom of it. I'm not a big fan of her because I find her quite spoiled and kind of a brat, and my husband has his reasons as well. My sister-in-law is 21. While I was there, I was just trying to stay positive so I wouldn't cry in front of them. The first instance of her saying something really insensitive to me was when I mentioned joining a grief group, because that's what my doctor recommended. She asked me, a group for grieving mums, but won't their dead children be older? Would you even relate? I understand that it may have been just her not understanding, but wow, it hurt worse than I thought. My doctor and my own mum have reiterated that I should consider myself a mum now, and I guess I just didn't think about the fact that some people won't think I am because I don't have a baby. And I never did, apart from a few minutes. But still, that's not even what I'm offended about. What really hurt me was my mother-in-law asking if I got the chance to hold my daughter. I said yes. I was grateful for the nurses treating her like every other baby, wrapping her up and putting her hat on, and then giving her to me. My husband agreed and told them that he held her and carried her down to where she was going when I was done, and he was glad for that. My sister-in-law then says, out loud with no hesitation, ew, you touched it when it was dead. My heart literally dropped. First of all, referring to her as it is disgusting to me. And second of all, the whole entire sentence is just disgusting too. I genuinely didn't know what to say. My mother-in-law scolded her, and my husband told them it was time to go. She never apologized. Later on, my mother-in-law called to apologize on behalf of my sister-in-law. I told her honestly, I didn't want or need an apology unless it came from her daughter, and even then, it was not likely I'd accept it. My mother-in-law got really pissy with me, and now they're both mad at me for alienating them because of her being autistic. She said that should not be an excuse for. She said that should not be an excuse for what she said. I disagree heavily, but am I the asshole for that? I'm not sure what that last sentence actually means, so we're just going to roll with that. Okay, situation as we see it here. I have said before on this show, and I am happy to say again, and I believe this is a hill I'm willing to die on, that grief is the most painful of human emotions. And yeah, this sort of just highlights when that grief is just awful, right? So there's a lot of different parts to this, but where is my attention drawn immediately? Okay. So my attention is actually immediately drawn to postpartum suffering it with no baby. I am pretty much immediately concerned for this person. Yeah, I think a situation like this would be very difficult to navigate without professional assistance. Why do I say that? These situations are actually frightfully rare. Particularly these days, like infant mortality is significantly down, And it is one of those subjects that is still essentially a Western taboo. So I think that is something which I would be looking at and going, okay, just the nature of what has happened here means we really want to be thinking about professional help for somebody in this situation. So that's just the starting point. Have I worked with this sort of a thing before? Yes. This is the sort of thing that tends to haunt people for a very, very long time. Whether they can take their baby home for a week or not take their baby home at all, when your infant child dies, it is a incredibly isolating experience. There are a few taboos in Western culture, and I think how to interact with somebody whose baby died in childbirth is absolutely one of those taboos. And as a society, we're very poor at it. I like the fact that so this is cool to me, even though it's patently untrue. Since then, obviously, we've been bombarded with support from our family. I am very thankful that that is your experience because it does help a lot. I have seen it where it has not obviously occurred, and it just adds to the isolation. So, first child, does that matter or not? I don't think it matters here. It's still loss of a baby. These are things that get extremely hyped up, and so the letdown is tremendous, but it's also being sort of let down in the worst possible way. What adds insult to injury is essentially when you like your baby stops moving, you still have to go through the pain of essentially giving birth to a baby that's dead, which is extremely traumatic. Like a lot of when you think about labor and childbirth from the perspective of, well, when this is done, I meet my baby, I get to take my baby home. That is a completely different thing to I am going through a pointless labor where I do not take this baby home. I will be going home without this baby. And it's just essentially pain for no reason, a very hectic kind of pain at that. A 32-week-old baby is not a small baby. It's not a large baby, but there's still absolutely a labor involved. She goes in on Friday night, and by the looks of it, gives birth, 3 to 5 hours later. At this point, I just hope that nobody's stupid enough to say, well, at least the labor was quick. It doesn't matter at this point. That is completely inconsequential. I'm also hopeful that people aren't stupid enough to say exactly the sort of thing which is said here. Right. This one I could rabbit on about for a very long time. Let's get to the actual point, right? Is she the asshole for not, being more understanding around her potentially autistic sister-in-law's comment? I think let's go for that, and then I might spend other time talking about other bits, but we'll see. Right. There's too many soapboxes here, which I need to make sure that I do not jump up on. Generally speaking, so autism that is not diagnosed, in my opinion, is not autism. A great deal of autism that is diagnosed, I remain highly suspicious, is not in fact autism. It is a poorly understood disorder that has a very, very murky rule set. And I think that is sort of borne out by what appears to be a very serious rate of overdiagnosis of autism, at least in Australia. So I think that is something that when I come to this, my first thought is undiagnosed autism. I don't care, that's not autism. If it isn't causing enough impairment to even warrant being checked out and diagnosed, then frankly, you don't have autism. Now, is autism just foot in mouth for situations where people say things out of order. No, it's definitely not. And a great deal of autistic people that I know, they are not making mistakes because they're so incredibly afraid of making mistakes because of a lifelong series of making mistakes that they will barely open their mouth for fear of making a mistake. So is that the case here? Not necessarily. So the way that I've got to read this from the sense that I know this person is not a particular fan of her sister-in-law, so we need to have charity towards the sister-in-law in reading her comments in that. But in saying that previous to this, she sort of views her sister-in-law as being spoiled, etc. That's in here somewhere. Where is it? I'd like to find this part just so that I know that I am saying the right thing here. I find her spoiled and kind of a brat. So I'm wondering whether or not this is an individual who, despite something like that, has been withheld from a lot of the negative consequences that would have forced them to change their behavior to, something which is a little more socially safe, Right. So then we come to what she said here. I like the fact that the mother-in-law does pick up on the situation and immediately. So my mother-in-law scolded her. At least there is some immediate consequence there of, mate, you've crossed the line. Husband told them it was time to go. That is excellent work, right? So I know that we tend to give a lot of husbands on this show trash talk for the way that they act. This is how it's done. You see the harm, it's your family, and you go, right, this is what I'm doing. I'm impressed. We don't hear much about the husband in this. There's little bits here and there, but he's got the nous and guts to be able to carry his baby where she's going. So he's not sort of like, it's not acting like his sister. And then he's got the right reaction there. This is good work. I like to see blokes who seem to emotionally get it and step up to the plate and take decisive action. And particularly in the case that this is his family, he immediately calls the shots in dealing with his family. And I just think it's a good model that people should generally work towards. She deals with her family, he deals with his family, and you're thinking about each other in the interactions that go on there. That's just a really nice touch. I read it and I sort of went, yes, go dad. Fantastic work there. Right. At the heart of this is, would somebody that is autistic say this, and does it remove their culpability such that you should not have a grudge against them? This is where we sort of hit very tricky points. Okay, so often I'm asking the question, what don't I know? Right? Here's what I don't know. I don't know if this person has autism or not. Right? Does that change the situation? A little. Right? Why? So generally speaking, and I have lots of fights with colleagues about this, so I'm sure this will set the internet alight if it ever takes any sort of traction. One of the important parts about ASD is a lack of understanding of the essentially rules of social convention, right? So very often they know what to do, but they do not know why they have to do it, right? They come up with rules that start to approximate the why, but very often the actual why is a series of essentially cultural rules and conventions that dictate particular things at particular times in ways that go beyond where you can write a rule set. Like, it's not like language and grammar where you can sort of tease the rules out. They often struggle with some of that as well, to be honest. So when you hit autism, autism has essentially 3 levels, right? Now, that also is particularly unhelpful because when it comes to what qualifies for somebody who does not understand social rules, we differ. Psychologist to psychologist differs, and we're back to the rant that I had the other day on the fact that a lot of our categories, people would assume that they are tighter than what they are. They are not. They are very much open to interpretation, and you end up with these sorts of issues in them. When it comes to social conventions around rules, then it really depends on the extent to which they don't understand it, right? So for me, I want to see very clear evidence that this person has not understood social rules from an early age, and that's just not going to be, oh, they struggle to make friends, right? Yeah, socially anxious kids also struggle to make friends. I want to see evidence from an early age that this person actually had to work at working out the rules. And this is down to people who have to, because they don't understand naturally, let's say things like facial expressions, they will practice them deliberately in mirrors and things like that to get as close as they can to what they know it's supposed to look like, because it's not something which automatically formed for itself for them. Other people who have rules around, let's say something like eye contact, very, very common one, where they will count eye contact on 3 seconds on, 3 seconds off, 3 seconds on, 3 seconds off. And you can sort of pick up these patterns where they are trying, because they've got feedback around don't stare and stuff like that, they have made up a rule which approximates what's supposed to happen, but doesn't actually really answer the question, So I want to see evidence like that really shows that this isn't just a difficulty, this isn't just a slowness. There is evidence that they flat out just do not understand the rules of social conversation. So that really boils down to this particular case here to go, well, what do we think? I don't know. Right? This isn't something that we can know from distance. I can't sit and say, oh, no, she doesn't have it, she's just faking. I can't say she does have it, and therefore we should take her on face value. What we can say is this person does not have an official diagnosis, right? Under those conditions, should this person be saying anything like that? A group for grieving mums, but won't their dead children be older? Would you even relate, right? So I look at something like that, could go either way there, because you can see that there's sort of a misunderstanding there about because it's different and it's not exactly the same, could you relate? But there's also an understanding there that relating is important, which is a pretty complex social idea to understand that there is a social benefit that comes along from being part of a group of people that relate in particular ways around a shared trauma, right? So I would look at that and kind of go, okay, could go either way. You touched it when it was dead, right? Again, this is one of those things of she gets the physiological reaction of touching the dead thing because that's against the rules, without the social connections that sort of say, right, but that particular dead thing was your child and you cared about that. And therefore, because you care about it, I care about it, even though in my head, it's just a dead baby, right? In these cases, would this be evidence of autism? It could be, right? And this is what I say. It's one of those, I don't know. What I know is this person we are told, does not have an official diagnosis, right? I do know of people who are socially inept enough that they would absolutely be able to make these statements. So this is not in and of itself evidence of autism. Now, generally speaking, and this could come down to upbringing, in which case, parents start to play a fault here. When you screw something up, you fix it, generally speaking, right? Most people with autism that I know are overly good at that, right? It sort of boils back to that. They're so used to making mistakes that it's hard sometimes to teach them how to back themselves because they're so confident that they're going to simply make more mistakes, right? And so that essentially becomes an issue here, where there just isn't any recognition that she has done the wrong thing and that she needs to adjust behavior. That's not particularly good at just the level of a human. Is that unique to something like autism? Definitely not. Generally speaking, people with autism that I have worked with in the past go the opposite way to this, which is they will apologize and never forgive themselves for making such terrible stuff up that they didn't understand that they were even making in the first place. So I look at that and kind of go, okay, we come to the am I the asshole question. No, you are not. And it's not about what they said, right? If they truly had autism, we can probably move on from what they've said. It's going to hurt and it's going to suck, but we can find a way past that. It's the doubling down by not apologizing and the mother-in-law calling to apologize on their behalf because, essentially the sister-in-law isn't, this is not a situation where her age is going to save her. At 21, you should have the social ability to be able to figure this stuff out, frankly, with autism or not. So that for me, that's not a free pass. Yeah, outside of that, what else is here? I think, well, I guess pathway forward, this stuff obviously needs to be communication between the mother here and dad. They need to have a chat about what it looks like. It would be very awkward and difficult if we simply cut off one side of the family, but you cut off your spouse's side of the family. It's not that it can't be done, but it should still be very much a joint decision. I find here mother-in-law got pissy with me and now they're mad at me for alienating them. Like this kind of enabling behavior is possibly how the sister-in-law gets there in the first place, that when the tokenism fails, the entitlement kicks in. And it's like, this is not the appropriate response. It's not how it's done. This is a rubbish way to do life and you should stop it. Outside of that, what's a pathway forward for something like this? So I did mention, obviously, I do think that professional therapy is good for people in this situation. The grief almost automatically becomes complicated because of, for instance, things like the trauma of giving birth to a dead baby. That is traumatic in the big T sense, given that not only is it a hell of a lot of pain, but it is produced by death, and it sort of reinforces the death that has occurred. So things like that I look at and kind of go, yeah, there's going to be some processing there. Joining groups, this one can be a mixed bag. Carefully run groups where there is, I don't want to say supervision because they're all adults involved, but making sure that we don't get into some kind of trauma comparing situation. That's just not useful to anybody, but I would say generally speaking, it is usually good for people who are struggling with something to be able to find like-minded people. However, I'm not somebody who buys into the wounded healer approach that essentially, you can only sort of be helped by somebody who has struggled with the same thing that you struggled with, such that only a drug addict can, or an ex-drug addict can understand a drug addict, etc. Very often I actually find the opposite, which is you will talk to somebody who is more centered and able to stay with you if they're not co-processing their own trauma at the same time as you. And my concern in psychology generally is it's often not helpful for us to be like trying to fight our own transference into the situation from a situation that was so similar for us that we struggle to recognize that the person in front of us is a separate person. So as much as I'm generally in favor of support groups, there are some caveats around that where it's not always helpful. And certainly I'd be cautious of the wounded healer. A wounded healer is often dealing with their own baggage, and they have a little bit less mental capacity to deal with yours. Again, I can see a good army of people coming to bite me on this. You know what? Bite me. I have done this for years, and I have certainly in my own practice found it a hell of a lot easier to work with issues that are not issues that I share, and that I've got more mental presence with somebody where I am able to help them with their issue and show empathy without my own feelings from my past coming into the situation. outside of that, when it comes to something like this, where, you know, it's sort of like where she has been clear, I told her honestly, I don't want or need an apology unless it came from her daughter, and even then, it was not likely I'd accept it. You know, she lost a baby 3 weeks ago, right? This is just not the time to be really thinking about or doing virtually anything, frankly. You know, you need to grieve. You need to work through this process of, what does my life look like without this baby that I had hyped myself up to, that in about, what, 3 to 5 weeks' time should be being actually born for the first time as a healthy baby daughter. You know, like, she is yet to go through the time where the baby would have been born, like that date which you keep looking forward to is still ahead of this person. I don't expect them to have all this leftover empathy to be understanding about their autistic sisters or potentially autistic sisters' comments, and mother-in-law getting pissy about it is just like, please stop it. You know, this isn't helping anybody at all. You know, yeah, I think I shall finish up there. That is certainly a new one to this channel. Yeah, both the stillborn aspects and the autism. I've been wondering when autism would pop up, but I believe there's probably more to look at there. But this particular one is not the one. So let's finish up there. A little bit of a heavy one. That's life. So take care, everyone, and I shall catch you in another episode. See you.